let's begin with our next session. Rethink, relearn, rebuild. The incumbent or insurgent way. Ladies and gentlemen, on the panel we have Aastha Almast, co-founder, The New Shop. Let's give her a huge round of applause. May I please invite on stage Bajaj, CEO and co-founder, Sirona Hygiene. Hitesh, Dhingra, founder and managing director, The Man Company. Please put your hands together for Rajiv Dubey, head of media, Dabur India Limited. May I now invite Rashi, Narang, founder, heads up for Tails. And finally, the moderator for the session, Sukhleen, Aneja, MMA India board member, chief executive officer of the Good Brand Company and the Good Glamm Group. All right, now that we have the stage set up, can we get one more hand mic, please? All right, once again, can we have a huge round of applause for this panel? Let's begin.
Guys, it's never easy to come and host a panel right after lunch. So, and thank you so much for playing that game. But I'm really, really excited to actually be surrounded with some real heroes who've built insurgent brands. And of course, Rajiv, you are at the helm of running a large media empire at Dabur. So super excited to have you all. I think each one of you has built a pioneering business. You've been a founder. You've actually seen the highs and lows, and many times done things but never given up on your own conviction. I think in today's discussion, my only sincere request would be keep it provocative, leave people with a lot of reflection, share your candid anecdotes. I think we are all surrounded with a lot of gyan, but I think what's really important is to really hear your story and get a candid reflection also of the times that were not easy, or what we would in our own books call failures. Do spend time also sharing with the audiences here. How do you actually get yourself out of those moments? Because as we build insurgent brands, I think it's really important to never lose your own motivation and to never give up, because it's never easy to be a challenger. I think with that, I'd love to start with you, Rashi. You're building a very interesting business. For those of you who don't know Rashi, Rashi is a huge pet enthusiast. She gave up her corporate job, she built the brand called Heads Up for Tails. It's an extremely loved brand, and of all of us who are pet lovers, I think know this brand top of mind. So Rashi would love to know, what is the one thing that got you going, and how are you building your business?
The one thing that got me going was my dog, Sarah. I couldn't seem to find anything of quality for her, and I wanted her to live her best life. So I started building really tiny, homegrown, just one-man army, and that's really how we started. But I think that during that journey, we connected with so many pet people, and it was their insights, their relationships, their problem areas, just listening to them, hearing what they had to say, empathizing with them, that gave us a huge amount of input for us to build our own products and innovate, very, very fast. So really following that design thinking approach, which is something that we still do just by staying really close to our customers, understanding what they need. And the brand is built with a lot of heart, but also science, deep understanding of the space, our dogs and cats, collaborating with many, many experts across the board, whether it was nutritionists, behaviorists, trainers. So I think collaboration also just helps bring so much knowledge onto the table, and then taking those learnings and then putting them out there. So it's been quite a journey, and there's a long way to go. But thank you so much. Thank you for also having me here.
You're most welcome, Rashi. I think for all of us, it's an inspiration to see someone be pioneering in a space which was really underserved. I think the pet market in India has really been underserved. And it's great to see your brand going. I mean, I'm pretty sure you'll go global with this brand. So really good luck with that. Hitesh, now moving on to you. This was a very interesting chat we were having over lunch just now, that if you look at the male grooming category, everyone seems to have painted the category with the same brush. Everything looks black. The guys have absolutely poker straight hair. All the products look very, very similar. So how do you actually build a brand where the entire category right now is sinking in the sea of sameness?
No, I think we have been asked this question, I don't know, a few hundred times, be it the VCs, be it the investors that we have on board, be it the employees. Look, I think when we started out, we knew that the biggest moat for any digitally native brand or a new age brand has to be the brand, right? So the brand story, brand purpose, it is very important to have a differentiated story if you are competing with obviously incumbents as well as your peers who have raised a lot more capital than you, right? Because anyone can copy a product, but no one can really copy the brand connect that you have with your consumer, right? So as a brand, obviously, we as a company, we started investing on telling our brand story from day one, right? And it started with the packaging, which was slightly more aspirational than whatever was there on the shelves. It started with innovations on the product side. So I think we knew that when we started out in 2015, I mean, there were obviously large incumbents offering one or two products catering to men, right? Be it the face whitening face wash or a deodorant, right? But apart from that, there was no depth in the category as such. So we knew that we'll have to create this category by launching more and more interesting products. So today we have almost 120 SKUs in the grooming category itself, right? Which is a large portfolio, considering there was nothing 5-7 years back. And second, obviously disrupting the channel as well, right? So today, I mean, this year we'll be 250 crore net revenue business, and 70% of our business is still online, right? So we believe that, I think that also differentiates us from wherever our nearest competitors are, right? So I think it's basically the, you can say founders mentality, founders mindset, disruptive mindset, all across in terms of whatever we do, which has kind of differentiated us from our competitors.
No, I think really well said, Hitesh, and actually a big round of applause for the company, the Man Company. It's not only a differentiated brand, it's also a profitable business. And I think for many of us here, we know how difficult is it to build a business, and that to a profitable business. It's never easy. Now, turning on the left side, Deep, very dear friend, and must say a remarkable social entrepreneur. You would not even guess how passionate he is about the entire intimate hygiene and menstrual care category. They've got a huge mission around ending period poverty. And I think it's such a differentiated space that they've taken and built a business on. Deep, it would be amazing to understand your journey on what led you into getting into a business like this.
Well, without making it sound fancy, I think it was serendipity. The way this category fell into my lap was professionally, you know, I come from events as a background, so I was into events, then I got into handmade carpets, which is a business that my wife runs. And all along I had seen that when it comes to these intimate and menstrual hygiene issues, women had made their life around finding jugards, you know, that like if you're going on a road trip, the solution to a toilet will be, I'll use the toilet at home and maybe, you know, not really look for a clean toilet on the way because there are none. Similarly, for menstrual hygiene concerns, there were similar solutions like a hot water bottle or painkillers would be in the bag always. So, but nothing specifically was available for these unmet needs. So in 2013 on a road trip, idea for P-Buddy, our first product, was born, where we were traveling from Delhi to Jaipur, 4 couples. And boys were having whatever we wanted to have, beer, Coke, and girls were not even having water from the fear of not finding the right toilet. And a friend's wife suggested that she had seen someone in Europe use a contraption to stand and pee, like a plastic bottle she had cut into half, made into a funnel. And while everybody laughed it off, I think somewhere I thought it's a very interesting problem to solve. So it started as just an accidental discovery of the category, but once you get deeper, you realize when it comes to this category, there are no solutions. We are still scratching the surface when it comes to hygiene solutions available to women in this country. So that's how it happened.
Madeep, how remarkable is that, that it took a man for him to solve probably one of the problems women have been suffering with for years. So thank you for that, and very insightful. Moving on to you, Aastha. You have set a bold vision of creating India's 7-Eleven. So for those of you who don't know the business that Aastha runs, she's got 120 convenience stores, all started by her, completely bootstrapped, and with a very, very bold mission of creating India's 7-Eleven. So Aastha, would love to understand what led you into starting this, and what are some of the challenges specifically in retail that you're facing now, especially with the pace of discounting that one encounters in online business, which is now probably the biggest drug that the online business is used to. How are you building a business amongst these times?
Fortunately for convenience retail industry, no convenience retailer ever discounted anything. So that's just a beginning of a profitable business right from the ideation stage. So why we thought of convenience retail, and this is a problem that was a personal problem of mine, my friends, anyone who was young, lived away from family, was constantly traveling for work, for education, had no idea around what was around them. Supermarket and grocery stores were too far, and Kirana stores were unstandardized. They didn't have round-the-clock service. They weren't quick, and half the times you won't find whatever you needed at one store. You would have had to make like some 6, 7 various Kirana store trips to figure out what you want, and it was a pain. And this is actually our own journey. The new shop is my third startup, and my earlier struggling days, we used to live in Mumbai, and we used to take a train, local train from Andheri to Church Gate, and I used to live in Lokhandwala, so it was like a 2-hour journey each side. My office was in BSC building, and every day we had like the most ad hoc working hours. We'd leave like at 10, 11 when the rush hours had subsided, and we would come back at like 11 p.m., midnight, when again the rush hour had subsided. And on the way there, we would look for breakfast options. We'd look for maybe pen drives, stationery, or things that we needed for that day. And on the way back, we needed grocery. We needed, again, a drink or something to come back, and what we needed on the way. Now, from a railway station, what can you find? Those vada paos, drinks. I had typhoid consecutively for 6 months, one after the other, because it was just so unhygienic. And sitting there in that train every day, me and my co-founders used to wonder, why is 7-Eleven not entering India? Why is Circle K not entering India? We're the youngest population in the world. We're upwardly mobile. We're the largest working population. And as data has it, every country which has grown through a massively young, dominant working population, convenience retail sort of explodes in those countries. The recent example was Indonesia. So that day we took a pledge, whenever we sell this business, the next business we're going to do is convenience retail. So 2019 is when we started doing this, and this problem got reminded to me when I used to live in Bangalore, and I got very sick one day at 8 p.m. And guess what, in Bangalore, you can find beer at 8, you can't find a Brufen. So you go to multiple stores, the only place you would find a Brufen is actually in a hospital. So this problem of standardized, quick, round-the-clock access is so grave that, we guys, just because the problem is, so omnipresent that we don't even realize and acknowledge it. And that's when we realize that, the country is going through massive infrastructural development. Your railways are going to get modernized. Your airports are going to get modernized. Our highways are going to be world-class quality. The residential areas that we are living in are getting upgraded. Why would that neighborhood-friendly store not get upgraded with offering the same kind of modern experiences that the world across is used to? So that's how the new shop was born. That's why it's called the new shop. And since then, there's been no looking back. Our value proposition was very clear to the customers from day one. We never had to spend a single penny on CAC. No customer acquisition cost, no marketing. This is something that's grown purely through word of mouth. Open the first store. Every single person in that catchment realize, oh, there's a 24-hour store within my walking distance. It's providing me home deliveries. I get everything under one roof. And that led to, multiple stores, customers talking about, oh, why won't you open the store in our locality? And that led to franchise, entrepreneurs coming to us, hey, can we own the new shop store? And there's been no looking back. We're 2.5 years old and hit profitability already. And growing super fast. Our vision is to create 10,000 entrepreneurs in India, and franchise is a path we chose. As failed entrepreneurs, we know how difficult entrepreneurship is in India, especially. There's 83% people in India today, in fact, most of the people in the room here that would mean, want to pursue the path of entrepreneurship. And most of them fail. And by the way, this is much higher than the global average of 50%. So everybody in this room given a chance. In fact, it says 1 in 2 people would quit their job if they had an option of starting up. So, this is our dream, and we wanted that dream to be. 9 of our employees are now new shop owners. So, given a chance to quit their job, they decided to quit their job and buy the new shop franchise. Nice. So, that's the vision with which we're growing, and we're making entrepreneurship more accessible and democratized along with the retail option.
More power to you, Aastha. I think what I always say is when you come to a room which is filled with entrepreneurs, these are the folks who literally light your fire. So quite literally. So now moving on to you, Rajiv. You are coming from the world where, like she mentioned, people would give an arm and a leg to quit and join this world. But would love to hear from you. So folks, for all of you who don't know Rajiv, Rajiv has had a remarkable 2-decade career at Dabur. Dabur itself has been pioneering. If you look at the categories they have built over the years, whether it's real juices, it's honey, it's Chyawanprash, or even Dabur Lal Tel, I think they have found the niches, owned the niches, and have continued to stay extremely clear about their strategy, the way they've gone chasing rural penetration. I think there are remarkable lessons to be learned from Dabur. Would love to hear your thoughts, Rajiv, if there was one advice you would like to give to insurgent brands on what are some of the things that they could look at learning from your experience.
Thank you so much. I thought मेरा number कब आएगा, but finally.
इस सभा में थोड़ा वक्त लगेगा.
मुश्किल. So we have been pioneers in a lot of categories. Like you mentioned about Chyawanprash, we were the first ones to make it in the country. Honey, we were the first ones to launch honey in the country. Juices, first companies to launch in the country. Even one category which we missed out was Ayurvedic toothpaste. We were again the first ones to launch, and again the leaders. And so categories which we have launched, and we have retained our consumers over the period, we have been number one. That's what we see. And wherever we have been challenges, it's been very hard to reach to a number 2 and sustain that position of number 2. Becoming number 1 is like very, very difficult. I think the most difficult part for any marketer is to find new consumers and retain the existing ones, right? So that's the challenge, and that's what we have been over the years been trying to do, trying to retain the consumers, because the categories, all these categories which you mentioned, have very high level of lapsage. For example, Chyawanprash, every year we have to go and tell the same story and acquire new consumers. And lapsage is very, very high. New consumers who come into the category, they don't usually go and start consuming it very quickly. Similarly, brands like red toothpaste, which is a very difficult category to get into, because when we entered this category, Dabur was 0, Colgate was like 67%. Today, Colgate Dental Cream, the CDC brand per se, stands at some 26% right now, and we have reached about 13%. Dabur as a company has become number 2 oral care company in the country. Number 1 across the East Coast, which is Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, we are number 1 by far, taking lead from Colgate. Very difficult it was, to tell the consumers a new story and get them to use a toothpaste which is red in color and tastes very, very different than a calcium carbonate toothpaste. So, so that's been the journey. It's not been easy for any company, but I think the most difficult part is to retain consumers over the period and get the new ones every year, every time you go and advertise. You talked about Lal Tel, Lal Tel is one brand, which is a baby oil. Baby oil, you don't use baby oil all your life. What happens is that when the baby is born, then you start to seek the information about such products. And so for us, every time a baby is born, that's a new opportunity for us. Every time you have to acquire a new consumer. So that way, we are incumbent, but we have to remain insurgent in a way so as to remain in business. And all of you guys are so much of inspiration. We learn from you guys, and one day would like to be like one of you. Like to build something like this within our own. But we have lots of success stories. We want to continue the success stories. Again, learning from you guys, we launched lots of products in the e-commerce space where we have. We don't have very significant shares in those categories, but we have built the categories like that. Like, for example, last year we launched baby diapers, which is just a category, which just a digital first category. Then other products like again the baby care range, they're totally very different. I mean, not very Dabur-like products, but something which will appeal to the masses, like apple cider vinegar, which is not found anywhere. We launched that. So these are the digital first brands which we got into and trying to see a success over there. But as a company, we're very, very restrained in a way that we try to experiment first, go into the marketplace, see how the product performs, and then go out. Because we are a listed company, our balance sheet is out in the public. We have to deliver GC&C EBITDA every month, every quarter. And if we don't do that, our stock goes down. So we have to be very, very careful and mindful of such facts, which is a luxury which you guys have. You can go out and spend money and build a category, So that's the difference, but we still try to remain afloat and try to do newer things.
Sukhleen, with your permission, these are really inspiring stories. And what's very, very interesting, and I think I speak on behalf of a lot of us, is, all of you are leaders in disruption. So we'd love to get the insurgency factor as well. So if we could get some of those from the panelists, we'd be really interested how we old world incumbents are getting really under pressure from all of you. So that insight would be very useful.
Thank you for that, Amit. I think on that, in fact, that was my next question, Amit. Especially in times like these, right? Remaining insurgent is also a challenge. So many founders begin insurgent, and then as you scale, we all bow down to the pressures of the market. And this is a question that I have for all of you. Feel free for anyone to start. A, what is it that creates insurgence and disruption? And B, how do you sustain it? How do you not succumb to the pressures of scale and lose your fundamental moat that built the business? Yeah, sure, Hitesh.
Look, so I think just because of our business model, being digitally native gives us access to a lot of consumer data, right? So even if we are scaling up, we are still very, very close to our consumer, right? Whereas I think for large incumbents, it gets slightly difficult, right? I mean, every year you have to spend millions of dollars in just getting the research done to understand what your consumer wants, right? For us, I mean, it's like sending one questionnaire or picking up a phone and talking to a few hundred or few thousand customers every month, right? So I think that's something which is core to our business model and which is a very, very strong moat that a lot of us insurgent brand has, right? And second, I think the agility in doing whatever we do, right? So we know that, let's say if there's a product that we have launched in the market, we'll launch it on our website. Within 3 months, we have the NPS and we have an ability to kind of make changes and relaunch that product again in the market, right? Which is very difficult for large companies to do. Third, obviously you also mentioned, I think in terms of marketing, we can afford to take a lot of risk, right? For a large company, I mean, the larger the company you are, the more difficult it gets to kind of experiment or take those risks, right? And I'll give a small example. When we got Ayushmann Khurrana on board as a brand ambassador, right? The first launch video that we did was 3 minutes long. He didn't mention about the brand. He didn't talk about the product. And that video got 300 million views without us spending a penny on media, right? And I'm sure, I think most of the people in this room would have seen that video, right? Gentlemen kise kehte hain. And that was nothing but our brand manifesto, right? But for a larger brand, it gets very, very difficult to take those kind of risks. So yeah.
Very well said. I think definitely don't intellectualize. Take punts. What would be your formula, guys?
I don't know. I think for us, the formula is fairly simple here. That we are not scared of taking risks. You know, especially in the category creation game. You know, there is no way in hell that you will do just a like a market survey and get a resounding answer to the need of a product. Like if I'd really gone to the drawing board and said how many women will actually stand in pee, or how many women will actually end up using a menstrual cup as an alternate to a pad, the market research would have failed us. So, but today millions and millions of women are using it. So the theory in our room is here, when you're launching a product, there's a 2:1 ratio that we follow. That for every two so-called Me Too products, if you're bringing, one innovation has to be there, you know. And that gets the team to think more and more on what is missing. And maybe that's the reason why we've been able to stay relevant in our category. That you need to take risks, and that's where the buck stops.
Any other reflections, guys?
We call it internally, we refer to it as the ability to fail fast. So it's really what Deep and Hitesh talked about, but just not being afraid to fail. If you want to launch a new product, you know, how do we get it going in 15, 20, 30 days versus months of process or the hierarchies to be followed. And if it doesn't work, move on. You know, just that ability, I think, and Hitesh touched on agility, which is again so very important. And I also think that one more thing that we focus on is continuous improvement, which again comes from customer insights, but we're not afraid to make 100 changes. So for example, if we put a shampoo bottle and 20 days later we're like, nobody's really reacting to it, I have no inhibitions in changing the packaging entirely and being like, okay, how do I rethink this whole piece, which I think is harder as you grow, and we're already finding it harder than earlier. So I can understand how that may become, you know, a ceiling. But yes, just some few little points.
No, that's super helpful.
Yep. So in our case, a lot of retailers would have thought 1,000 times before deciding to open a store 24 hours. So this, our biggest moat or new way of thinking things was introducing a pan-India movement around opening things 24/7. And by the way, the license is really, really hard to get. And we're the only company in the country right now that has a 24-hour license pan-India. So we're set for the next very few years. We're the only guys with that license. But for a lot of retailers, you know, the science and the unit economics to make 24 hours work is very different from a typical retail. And we figure it out. So even if the large guys now decide to get in the industry, it's a very long way before they figure out, the unit economics and the science of running 24 hours. The second thing we did was, because nobody was looking at this space, we went and land grabbed best locations. Now in retail, and I think Rashi would know, getting access to the best locations is the best moat. So in fact, we were very fortunate. Our first partnership happened with Indian Railways. Now with Indian Railways, partnering with the largest gas station company in the country, partnering with the best airports, highway authorities, large builders, we've also raised money from a lot of large real estate guys. We have access to the best 10,000 locations in India sitting today. Now that's a moat that's very, very hard to beat. And we were thinking on very unconventional lines on, what is it? People, when we were getting into this industry, retail has all the big boys and there's us. In fact, I can proudly say I'm the only woman in FMCG retail in India. So, I used to be thrown a lot of questions around how you're going to beat the Tatas. What if they suddenly decide, Ambani suddenly decides and calls, the railway ministry and you're out of those 500 railway stations. What are you going to do? So these really random questions, if you ask me, were thrown at me. But, that's when we decided that let's start looking at locations that are very hard to get. Let's lock them, and then all we have to concentrate for the next 3 years is execution, and everything else is already set. So those were the two things that we really focused on.
Amit, it's such a good question, because having crossed over from an incumbent to now being within a startup, I think two things which I can definitely see from my experience as well is, number one, failure is not personal, which many times in professionally run organizations, failure tends to become personal. And I think that is a huge shift in mindset, because in companies like here, people are absolutely not afraid to fail, acknowledge I didn't do well, move on to the next thing. I think the moment you depersonalize failure, the first hurdle rate is broken. The second one is obsession for speed. And that comes with giving autonomy to the person who's a specialist, may not be the most senior. And that's another very big difference. So someone who may be 28 but maybe a domain expert actually has greater power than someone who may be a CEO, simply because he's a domain expert. And that creates speed. And I think the third thing which becomes very, very important, most of us in multinationals, we're used to looking at GDP, negotiating our plan numbers, and making sure we beat them. The entire entrepreneurial world works without targets, right? Because a target is meaningless. They're only chasing sequential growths. And they're only, I mean, the whole battle is for survival. And that completely is a different DNA versus chasing a plan number. Because target, by definition, confines you. It is a finite number. So I think that is a big, big difference in the way I think entrepreneurs are inspiring the nation today. And I think more power to all of you, because it's also forcing incumbents to bring in some of those values, but very difficult to imbibe, because the DNA itself needs to be relooked at. How do you make people co-founders of brands, give them part ownership versus treating them as employees? So it's a fundamental shift in thinking. That brings me to my last question in the interest of time. Each one of you, right now we're in an environment where I'm glad I'm sitting with many profitable folks here. I can tell you some of us are not. But having said that, would love to know from you, what's the one thing that's really keeping you up all night as an insurgent? And would be different for each one of us, but would love to hear your one thing that's really a worry or what keeps you up all night, the problem that you're yet to solve.
For us, it's currently the absolute intense competition, which is all discount-driven, which is a race to the bottom. And we often wonder, you know, there's so much noise around acquiring customers like that, and you often wonder, are you really missing out? Are you not being able to protect your turf? And I think for a bit, we were like, okay, maybe we should do that too. And very quickly, we realized, you know, the cost at which it comes is not sustainable. So just going back to values, beliefs, and business model, and really sticking to your guns.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, for us, you know, so going back to the last question, you know, there was a time when we used to take about 2 years for a brand to be launched in companies like ours. Now we cut that timeline, cut the time, and now last year we launched a product which was in 13 days, right from beginning to the time it landed in consumers' laps. So we're also learning from you guys, you know, being quicker and everything. The one mantra which we've been told is that strategy is available off the shelf. It's execution which matters in the end, you know. So we focus more on execution rather than strategy, because everybody knows strategies rather, and execution is where we excel in, and we focus on our execution power.
Awesome. Hitesh?
Yep, so I'll say probably incumbents are catching up fast. So I think that's the thread that we have. But to be honest, I think, so last year, obviously, considering the environment, and we've always built the brand, the company in a very disciplined way. But still, we figure out that getting top line is probably a lot easier than getting the profitability in place, right? Because, and that too while scaling up. So to scale profitability is the biggest challenge. And I think we did a lot of things in last 1 year to get to profitability, right? So we swung from -15 to +10. And I think the biggest learning was that revenue is still a science, but EBITDA is like engineering, right? I mean, there's so many moving parts to it, and you have to kind of keep on. But once we hit that break-even point in profitability, then after that, we started seeing the flywheel, right? So the growth, which was probably there 2-3 years back, right? 20-25% month-on-month growth. Now we don't have fear of investing a lot more on marketing, right? Because we know that we've cracked the code, and now it is just about scaling it up in the right fashion. So, I'll say probably, I think for last 1 year, that's what was keeping us awake. Now, obviously, I think the next frontier for us is to crack GT, right? So we piloted in GT for last 1 year, and we're still struggling, right? Because we were not offering credit, so we are not a brand which is focusing on primary. I think what we've realized that probably we've managed to create that brand pull in the online ecosystem, but offline will probably require a different strategy altogether, right? So still kind of trying to learn that.
So GT is keeping you up all night. Nice.
So for us, it's there's too much demand, We've signed up a lot of things and we have to now execute and execute super fast. So what's keeping us awake is, we hadn't done any piece of marketing up till March because we had a target that only when the company becomes profitable will we start marketing. And we did another unusual thing. We got a brand ambassador, Rajkumar Rao, to do franchise marketing. Now, this has never been done before. So, usually celebrities sell, consumer products. They don't sell livelihood. And in this case, it was a crazy bet and, we're all thinking, shit, what's going to happen, But it turned out like really well and we were oversubscribed for our franchise requests. And now the problem that I'm going around with is I have to hire more people. I have to build faster tech. I have to do everything to meet that demand. So I'm in slightly maybe a different growth journey in life, but it's very challenging to suddenly see that overwhelming demand and to fulfill it.
Aastha, that's still a very good problem to keep you up all night.
But it is challenging.
Yeah, indeed.
For us, it's only about how to just continue to stay relevant in our customers' lives and ensure that we keep bringing innovation. That's the only thing that I believe will set us apart in this category creation game. So that's what gives us sleepless night.
That's
Time's
amazing.
up.
That's absolutely amazing. And I genuinely feel that I think what you said, Aastha, is very true. Maybe it's not even 1 out of 2 in the generation to come. I guess 100% of India would veer towards entrepreneurship. And I think more and more incumbents need to create a world where there's not a CEO factory, but perhaps a founder's factory, because that's what probably the new age requires. Many more people who take much deeper ownership of their businesses. But thank you so much for an amazing panel, and I hope it was insightful for all of you.